Hi, Grandma here reading The Golden Goblet by Eloise Jarvis McGraw. And I'm starting in the middle of what chapter am I on? 7? On page 125, chapter 8, 125, middle of the page. Diffidently, Ranofer raised the latch, opened the gate just wide enough for them both to squeeze through, and closed it carefully behind them. Immediately, all the past miserable months fell away from him as he stood breathing the hot, well-remembered odor of molten gold and hearing the chiming of a little hammer. They had entered Zaho's shop. Not his dwelling, which must be beyond that inner courtyard wall. Across the clay-paved court was a row of stalls roofed with palm fronds. In the largest, an old man knelt on a mat before a low work table, otherwise the shop was empty. As Zaho half turned, both boys bent their heads, each with one hand on the opposite shoulder, in the gesture of respect. "Who comes?" said a deep, even voice. "Straighten yourselves so I may see something besides the top of your heads." They obeyed hastily. "Greeting, master of all goldsmith," Heqet said. "I come from Rake. He has sent me to fetch the—" Aye, the steak, I remember. Come here." Heqet started across the court, and Ranofer followed him dreamily past small basket-shaped furnaces in which the fires were dying, past the balanced scales and the washing vats. He was conscious of the gleam of gold, and there the round shapes of crucibles, the smoothness of the clay floor under his bare feet, so different from the grit and stone dust of his present life. The familiar and well-loved details receded into the background. However, as they approached the austere old man hammering dangling from his long-fingered, supple-corded hand. Ranofer remembered the hand well, and the broad, strong-boned face with its thinning eyebrows and full carven mouth, but he'd forgotten how austere Zaho's manner was, and how difficult it had always been in the old days to summon courage to utter a few words in his presence, even when his father was beside him, even when Zaho had asked him some questions first. "I need not have worried when I would pour out my troubles like an imbecile," Ranofer thought. "I cannot even open my mouth. What makes me think that I would dare to speak to this great one? I, a nobody, a ragged stone-cutter's boy." He stood tongue-tied, feeling his very existence as intrusion, while Zaho directed Heqet to the farthest stall and to the cupboard where he would find the steak. Then, when Heqet had bowed and hurried along the row of stalls on his errand, Zaho glanced at Ranofer. For a moment that seemed as long as a day, and his eyes rested indifferently on Ranofer's face. Zaho started to turn away, but hesitated. His scanty brows drew together in a puzzled expression. "I know you, do I not?" he said. Ranofer tried twice before he found his voice and discovered how to make it work. "Aye, master. That is, you knew my father." "Your father? It is the son of Thutra, my departed friend. May his 3,000 years be full of delight." "If Ammon wills," Ranofer murmured automatically. "Aye, Thutra's boy. And your name is—" "Ranofer, master. Ranofer, I remember. How do you fare now, Ranofer? You are apprenticed at some gold house, I suppose." "Nay, I am apprenticed to my half-brother Gabu, the stone-cutter." "Stone-cutter?" Zaho's eyebrows lifted. "That is strange. I thought I remembered that you were interested in the smith's art, but then I forget things nowadays." Indifferent again, he turned back to his work. "But I am," Ranofer wanted to cry out. He could not make a sound, confronted by Zaho's back. "Why did I say that?" he thought furiously. "It was all wrong. I should have explained first. Then—" He forgot even his self-recrimination as his eye fell on the object lying on Zaho's table. It was the half-finished, a wide gold collar formed of tiny chains strung with innumerable golden beads. Not beads, bees, each one delicately and imaginatively conceived, superbly wrought. Without knowing it, he edged forward until he stood at the old man's shoulder, looking down at the wonder and breathing hard. Zaho, glancing up at him, followed his fascinated gaze. "An order from the palace," he remarked. 60 days hence, at the festival of the High Nile, Queen Tai will wear about her beautiful neck Pharaoh's newest gift. Aye, it will be complete by then if I keep working. He picked up a tiny hammer and began to reshape a golden wingtip, which seemed to the boy already perfect. Ranofer watched the long-fingered, agile old hands and clasped his own behind him. They felt harsh with stone dust, rough and clumsy. "Oh, that I might learn to make such things," he whispered. The hammer paused, uplifted, as Zaho shot him a keen glance over his shoulder. Then he went back to his hammering. "You will never learn to make them at a stone-cutting shop." Ranofer gathered all his courage, resolved to right his mistake. "It is Gabu's will, not mine. But I am apprentice there, master. He took me from Rake's gold house where I had been working. Not learning, only working," he told himself fiercely. "Get everything straight this time. He took me from Rake because he stopped swallowing hard. He could not believe it safe to mention the theft of gold and the name of the thief in the presence of any goldsmith. Even Zaho might think he had stolen it himself. Perhaps you lack skill, Zaho said. Nay, master, or aptitude. Nay, or diligence. Gold working is not for the lazy. Master, I would ask nothing better than to spend every moment of my life at it. It was nothing to do with me. I did not want to leave. I did not want to, but Gabu. Again, Ranofer floundered and fell silent. Zaho put down his hammer and turned. Placing both long, strong hands on his knees, he scrutinized Ranofer. There's something you do not tell me, he said finally. Aye, master, there is something I dare not tell anyone, except the ancient, Ranofer thought, but he does not count. Zaho considered this for a moment. Then why do you tell me anything at all? He inquired. Because one day before my father died, you looked at the little things I'd made and said they showed skill. You said perhaps when he's older. Zaho regarded him thoughtfully for a while, then picked up his hammer again. Over the ring of its tappings, he spoke composedly. You wish to become my pupil? Oh, I wish it. Who would not wish it? But I cannot pay the fee. Gabu takes the coppers I earn at stone cutting, and I have nothing else. Cling, cling, cling went the little hammer. I do not take apprentices, Ranofer, Zaho said. I know. Ranofer's voice was almost inaudible. I asked for nothing, master. I wished only to see you again, perhaps watch you work a little. Why, indeed, had he spoken of all this to Zaho, who could do nothing about it? No one could do anything about it. Ranofer felt a fool. He felt utterly miserable. I remember looking at your work, Zaho said unexpectedly. My old friend Thutra took me one morning to a cupboard and showed me a cup with a handle and 2 armbands. One of them was overambitious. He stopped work for an instant to level the hammer handle and a sharp glance over his shoulder at Ranofer. You did not know how to attempt the spiral pattern. His admonishing eye held Ranofer's a moment. Then he resumed his work. The other armband was creditable, as was the cup. Aye, quite creditable. Thank you, master. Ranofer was glowing with the praise, so joyful now as he had been miserable 2 minutes before. Zaho ceased his work on the wing-tip, examined it intently, and seemed satisfied at last. He turned with the collar still in his hand and gave his full attention to Ranofer. Thutra was my friend for 20 years, he said. I would be faithless if I looked the other way when his son had fallen upon evil days. Still, Zaho's ragged eyebrows lifted arrogant. Perhaps I would be faithless if the cup and the armband had been poor. I'm interested in goldsmiths, not orphans. Of course, master, Ranofer said humbly. However, the cup and the armband were creditable, promising. I wish to help you, Ranofer. You may come to me as a pupil, and I will require no fee, but you must not speak of that to my other pupils. For one moment, Ranofer felt he could soar straight into the air like any bird, but only for one moment. In the next, he plunged sickeningly to the earth. Master, I'm not free to be your pupil, he whispered. I am apprenticed to Goblet. Dissolve your apprenticeship. I cannot. You speak with flapping tongue, the old man said calmly. When the reasons are sound, is it a simple process of law to part from one's master? Any scribe can write the papers. Ranofer stood like a culprit, head hanging, face burning with humiliation. Master, if I did that, Goblet would kill me or sell me. Besides, one must eat. I have nothing except what he gives me. After a moment, Zaho rose from his knees and carried the gold collar to a fire smoldering in a small hooded furnace. Coaxing a fresh blaze with a blowpipe, he found tongs and with them held a portion of the collar carefully to the blast. His corded brown old back gleaming with the heat, the subject appeared to be closed. Everything in Ranofer fought frantically against its closing, so frantically that his racing mind found a solution. Master, he exclaimed. He found himself standing by Zaho's side without knowing he'd moved. Master, I work only in the day at the stone-cutting shop, and at night Goblet is often gone from home, often and very late. Even in his own eagerness, the old question flashed through Ranofer's mind. Where does he go? He moistened his lips hastily and went on. I could come at night and learn, if you would allow it. Zaho tossed the blowpipe aside and straightened. That is impossible. Do you think I work without ceasing like some god? I am an old man. I rest my weary bones at night. But master, son of my old friend, it is clear that I can do nothing for you at the present. You must reshape your life into some other form. When you have done this, come to me again and I will teach you. After a long and difficult moment, Ranofer managed to answer in a very low voice. Thank you, master, I understand. I will try very hard. The old man nodded, not unkindly, and started toward one of the far stalls, carrying the collar. Ranofer walked slowly to the gate. There he found Heqet, whom he had completely forgotten, waiting with the stake beside him on the ground. Heqet's enormous eyes and attitude of respect indicated that he had heard everything Zaho had said. In silence, the two boys lifted the heavy stake and carried it between them out into the deserted street, in which the rosy light was graying into dusk. There was no need to speak, for each knew the other's thoughts. They said nothing until they had reached the street of the goldsmiths and were approaching the apprentices' quarter with Rake's shop in sight at the end of the street. There Ranofer stopped, his eyes on the familiar gate ahead. You are to take the stake to the gold house? He asked. Aye. Rake will be there? Aye. He said he would wait until I came. Heqet paused, then added, I can carry it the rest of the way, Ranofer. You need not come. Ranofer glanced at him gratefully and nodded, relieved that he did not have to explain. He had not seen Rake nor set foot inside the shop since the day he'd left it so abruptly months before. The same day Ibni had left abruptly, too. Common sense told him that Rake knew nothing of his connections with the affair, but he felt so certain that the odor of thievery must hang about his name at the gold house that he had no desire to test the point. If Rake were to look at him with disdain and disappointment, he knew he would shrivel with the shame. And if Rake were unchanged, kind and concerned with his welfare as always, that would be worse. Today, of all days, that would be far worse. Ranofer felt that if anyone were kind to him right now, he would fly into a million pieces. Heqet heaved the stake to his shoulder. You will come to the papyrus marsh tomorrow at midday? Aye, I'll come. With no further talk, the boys parted. Heqet to trudge up the dusky street toward the gold house, Ranofer to start the long walk home. It was not until he reached the ferry docks, now rising high and queer-looking above the shrunken river, with the ferries moored far out in the basin of mud, that he began to realize, first, how tired he was, second, how late it had grown while he stood talking to Zaho. If Goblet were home, waiting for him, growing more and more angry at having to wait, Ranofer's steps quickened in spite of his tired and aching body. I can rest later, he thought. The sooner I get home and hand over my coppers, the sooner. He stopped short. He did not have his coppers. He had dashed out of the stone-cutting shop this evening, thinking of nothing but Zaho, so afraid that Pi would detain him for some trivial task that he had not even waited for the daily ritual of wage-paying, and had not even thought of it until now. How could I have forgotten, he thought, standing aghast in the middle of the darkening street. Still, why should he have remembered? He felt no interest at all in his wages, since all he did was carry them home to Goblet. If I could have them once, he thought bitterly. Never mind. He could not have them. Things were as they were, and right now they were very bad indeed. He could not stand there forever while night came on, yet he could scarcely conceive of going home to face Goblet empty-handed. What will I tell him? Ranofer thought desperately, even while his feet took him hurrying homeward again. I cannot tell him I forgot. He will not believe it, and then he will beat me for lying. If he does believe it, he will beat me anyway from fury. Aye, and he will want to know where I have been so long, what I've been doing, and why I've been doing it. I cannot think of answers to all those questions. I will have to tell him nothing, or the truth. When he reached the street of the Crooked Dog, he'd not yet decided between these alternatives. Either was unthinkable. He stopped trying to decide, and in a sort of exhausted calm, trotted the rest of the way down the gloom-filled street and into the familiar barren courtyard. It was empty. Whew, maybe there would be a miracle, Ranofer thought as he leaned panting against the gate. Maybe Goblet did not wait this once. Maybe he forgot the coppers too and went out somewhere and will stay a long time, until tomorrow, and will never know that I did not have them, or ask me questions, or find out that I went to Zaho's. The hinge on the door at the top of the stairs creaked loudly. The door banged back against the wall, and Goblet came violently down the stairs. There would be no miracle that night. Wow. Well, at least he has some answers that Zaho would welcome him if he could come. He just has to figure out a way that he can be free of his brother. See you next time. Bye-bye.